So I left our meeting last time and I went and talked to our HR people. I had talked originally to my director. He's like, oh yeah, you're covered. I'm like, no, I'm not. And the person in HR handed me my contract, handed me the actual physical contract, and he and I looked through it. And by adding one line, I added help from the district. And it's the same line they added to the CBI teachers in the life skills room. So able to provide services in the community with students who are blind and visually impaired. Now that line doesn't work for just a TBI because they can't do it because they don't have the COMS. So I reminded them that, you know, we have a second TBI and her contract can't have this line in it. But by adding that one line in the job description, now if something happens, I have the district behind me and the other one. So I'm like, yay, 5 years ago. Let's see, recertified now, so 6th year, we finally have something in place.
All right, well, good for you. The second one is preparing for life after high school, no services for adults in Kansas.
My family's been talking about that because I have a extended family member who is legally blind and is not able to get any help. I'm like, how much am I allowed to help you before I get in trouble from not having proper paperwork in place or whatever? And also, what are my kids gonna do once they go? Because I'm gonna have middle schoolers getting out of high school eventually. So good question.
Well, we have to start early. I mean, we really have to start early, and we need to educate parents about how important it is to have orientation and mobility at an early age. You know, I think of it as if I think a student is academic and has good problem solving skills, and I think they're going to be able to ride public transportation someday, or access, you know, some sort of paratransit kind of program. Well, when other kids are driving at 16, what can my student do at 16 that's equivalent? And that they're driving alone at 16, you know, from point A to point B. It might be a simple route, but they're, you know, maybe it's just from home to their school, or it's just the parents are allowed just from home to whatever. But we have to give them those skills if we think that they have the ability to do it at that time. Give them the opportunities. We want them to have the opportunity, this is my thing, to ride city buses alone. And if there's a problem, they can problem solve with the COMS probably following the bus. Does that make sense? So then they can text and go, I just got off at the wrong stop. Well, the mobility instructor is there to be able to intervene and say, okay, so what would we, if this happened in real life and I wasn't here, what would we do? What are some of the options for you? What would be a plan B? So, but that means we need to start really early.
Well, Julie, with your comment about the bus, typically when you do public transportation, how long do you ride with them before you follow? Or at what point, what makes you decide, okay, I'm ready to follow, they're ready to be
I'm ready to follow. Well, I ride with the student until I know that they can, like, I might just be right in a seat next to them, you know, in the beginning, so that I can prompt them if they miss their landmark of where they're supposed to get off, or they get, you know, they think they make a decision. I want them to be able to tell me, I'm getting off now and this is why, you know, so I want that conversation. And then until they get consistent with that, I don't move on to the next step. But then the next step is I sit at a different location and I want them to make the decision on their own.
Mm,
to get off and pull the cord or whatever it is that's available in their,
mhm.
bus. And now, then the next time might be that I'm gonna get off, but it's just a simple thing. Maybe they're just gonna go from this stop to another stop down the road. You know what I mean? That we've identified. And so they're not doing a full complete bus route. They might be just doing one little from one stop to another. And then see how that goes, and I'm just following really short. But I want to make sure they've had some problem solving. There's a backup, and sometimes I go with a TSVI or a paraprofessional or somebody comes with me. And so then they're on the bus in case there's a problem and I'm following, or I'm on the bus with the student and they're following.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure that the student, it's just depending on the student's skills, what I think they are, how much support are they going to need along the way. But sometimes I will take somebody else with me, just to help before we get to that point. But I want to be confident that they're pretty consistent, always saying, yes, that's the stop, that's the right stop, So it's baby steps, but we have to start when they're a lot younger.
Yeah, my question is, when do you start? Because I don't have access to public transportation here. So do I start them as early as young middle school? Because I'm going to have to drive them up to Wichita to get access to anything, or maybe even to Derby, just to get access to something like any transit.
So, yeah, so what are are there any, if there's nothing, not even a paratransit?
No, not
nothing?
really.
Oh my gosh, they're gonna have to get the heck out of Dodge when they graduate.
Yes.
So one thing to look into is every county in Kansas is required to have some sort of transportation for people who are with disabilities. In many counties, it's lumped in with transportation for senior citizens. And so sometimes you have to do some digging to figure out where that's out. Now, it's probably more likely some sort of paratransit door to door. Sometimes in some of these outer communities, they'll have certain days that there is a vehicle that goes back and forth to Wichita so people can get to doctor's appointments or different things. But that's probably a good thing to start digging both yourself and even have your students involved in that process to figure out, because legally it's a requirement to have something.
There is a general public transportation, but it costs $2 for students to ride it, for anybody to ride it.
Right.
And then, they only go to certain places.
Right.
And they only
so that's how they're covering that requirement.
Yes.
But to start getting to know those people and figure out how they work, and is there actually, there's one thing they advertise, but is there actually any other leeway? Are there other options? We have to be advocates and teach our kiddos to be advocates. And I would say the same regarding just that prep for life after high school. Yes, my typical answer is there aren't specific services for people who are visually impaired, but there is still VR. There is still the requirement for services to be available. So it's again that advocating and figuring out who your VR person is and probably educating them about people with visual impairments if they've not had someone like that on their case list before, and advocating for this student is coming up, this is what they're gonna, getting those people coming to IEP meetings. I know in my area, transition coordinators, like it's almost common, they don't even refer to VR until 6 months before graduation. Well, that's way too late for our kids. Right. So we just have to keep saying, nope, it's got to be sooner. Nope, it's got to be sooner. Nope, it's got to, because once they know they're out there and they have to serve them just like they have to serve them anyone else. It's going to take them time to figure out how are we going to come up with these services? What are we going to do? They may need O&M on a college campus, and if they're going to your local community college, I've gotten creative before and I've found a way that I get to be the person who gets to be paid through VR to do that training on the college campus. It's you don't have to be willing to do that either, but those are all things, just getting out there and finding out legally there is something, there has to be. So you
Right.
just have to figure out what it is.
And you can, some people do get, like Anna was saying, some people do get hired as a consultant or, through Voc Rehab, they will hire a COMS that's close by.
And I was gonna
and
say
things like-
they're always looking, because I would always get phone calls when I was working for the school. So if
Mhm.
it's something you're willing to do,
And helping a student understand all the rules with different types of systems. So like paratransit systems where they're door-to-door services, there's always different rules. So like I've been in one community where if you want a paratransit to come and pick you up and take you from, point A to point B, whatever it might be, you have to call 7 days before. So like if you want it next Monday, you have to call that Monday. And then they have rules about canceling, how many, times you can cancel, how much time do you have to give them in advance to cancel? And you can actually, in some communities, they have a really organized, so that like if you've canceled at certain points, it's a point in the inappropriate way, you get a point next to your name and they'll add up those points. And then you may be deemed that you can't ride it for X number of days because you've violated their rules too much. So you have to find out what all of those things are, read the information that they give you so that you know all these unique rules for each paratransit kind of program. How are they eligible? Some of them have eligibility criteria, especially if they have a city bus system. They might have eligibility criteria that then the person, can they use their city bus? And if they can't, why is it that they can't? Sometimes they'll have to have a doctor's or an orientation mobility specialist to write a reference or some information about it. The student skills, they'll have a form for them to fill out. So it's just, and every community is going to be different.
Well, I haven't
That's
had
a
a
lot.
student yet who has graduated high school and gone to college, but that's coming up for me. And I've heard other COMS and TSBIs say that when they're doing the college search, they try to find a college where there's more support for people with
Right.
visual impairments. And I think it's kind of the same thing with adults, that you can choose where you live for the most part. And like, they don't have anything here in Garden City, but in Dodge, they have Pillar Prairie Independent Living something. And so it's close, but if you really wanted to be in the midst of something like that, you might just have to look for a city that provides it.
Right. Yeah, it should be a part of I think that's a good point. It should be a part of their college. If they're going to go to college, should be a part of their questions that they're asking,
Well,
about the community, the school, that kind of thing.
we weren't even looking at college today, and I was talking with a middle schooler about living in Wichita compared to living in Udall, which
Mhm.
has no streetlights. So I was like,
Right.
there's ups and downs. She's like, yeah, but I don't see there being as many ups that I would want to live there. I was like, yeah, but right now you're not doing much other than going to school. Later, you'll be doing different things and more things.
Mhm.
When
So I was
I,
like,
oh, sorry. When I
Go ahead.
used to write IEPs, when I had small towns, I would once a quarter put in a time where we could go to the city and we could do that for the day. And then I also didn't make that a choice by the kids. For the parents, I did, but I would say things like, some of my small town guys would say, oh, I'm never going to move out of the farm area. I'm never going to do any of that. And I always told them, what it happens if you get married and your kid gets sick and you have to live in the city for, a few months. And that kid ended up going to a big town in Ohio to go to college. So, it always seemed to work out.
The next one is increasing travel and independence for students who are deafblind and deafblind strategies.
So I'm curious what people think about this topic, because with the younger deafblind kids, does everybody like like, I think they should be given the cane right away so that they can start exploring using their hands and their cane. Is that kind of what other people think?
Here's the classic, it depends on the situation, but yes.
Cop out answer, Anna.
No, but ultimately, I mean, and I'm reminding myself that I have a lot of littles this year. The earlier we can do the cane better, the better. In my experience, as I look back on students who are now, maybe we got around to middle school and decided, yeah, cane was probably a good idea. I'm like, man, but if we'd started even just on lessons with me, exploring that cane in second grade, how much further would they be when they get
Or
to middle school
earlier.
and go, yeah, I actually need this. Yeah, or earlier. But that was specific to a situation I'm dealing with now that.
Well, because the reason I ask is because I know I've had a couple of come to agreement discussions with a couple people. We're always like, no, they have to have their hands free so they can explore. As they're walking down the hall, they have to be able to feel where they're at. And I'm like, they can still feel where they're at if they have a cane, but their cane is an extension of their hand. And if they're feeling with their hands, that's fine, but they have to know something's coming up. I mean, you can't just walk around with I understood where they were coming from, because they were like, we want to feel everything tactily and explore and keep moving that way. But I was like, if you're gonna move, and you need to learn how to use the cane as your tool to help you explore. And so,
Well, I don't know many
Yeah.
elementary schools that allow them to walk around with their hands on the walls. They're like hands down, walk in a line,
well, and this was for
um,
completely deafblind child. And
yeah, I
so,
also don't have any of those.
yeah, and they just kind of were like, I haven't, in any of the stuff that I've come across, like they do a lot with deafblind, but I don't know that they do a lot with O&M and deafblind, because everything I've ever come across is start as early as possible with that cane, especially with deafblind, because it assists them in exploration, and then it assists them in exploring. I mean, they can still touch things with their hand. But anyway, so that was kind of, I wanted to hear other people's thoughts, because I couldn't agree with them on it, because I couldn't see any reason for them to not use their cane.
Well, I
as
think it
they're
also
learning.
provides, it gives them a choice. Like our students who are cane users, they can pick and choose what they want to explore further. And with the cane, if you start early, then you're kind of giving them that same option.
I'm probably with Jenny. I got in a little hot water for offering a cane to our, I don't know, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, and deaf. I just found out that he had hearing impairment. But I am totally convinced that had we not given him a cane when we did, the next year Jenny wouldn't have gotten him to walk with the cane. We introduced that cane and he would throw it. It was a weapon. We did back chaining. We did everything we could to get him to keep a hold of that cane. We started for 5 feet, 10 feet. We sung. I was singing up and down the hallways at KSSB, everything and anything. And the next year, it finally clicked with him, and Jenny got him to walking with the cane. So I totally agree with giving a cane as early as you possibly can.
So I guess my question would be, and I don't know, Julie, if you can speak to this or not, are the qualifications, so to speak, the determining point at which we decide, yes, a cane is appropriate for this child, are they different for someone who is deafblind as opposed to someone with only a visual impairment?
I can't think of anything specific where we have it written in stone somewhere, that it says that it's different. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that I would have ever come across that it would be different. And it's been a long time since I've read the book by Donna, by what was her name? Donna Sauerberger.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She wrote that book. It's been ages and that probably needs to be updated, but I can't think of anything specific. I do like to put the cane in kids' hands, even if it's just a little bit each day, you know, at a young age. I mean, I've given a cane, not a deaf-blind student, but I mean, I've given canes. I'm sure I could survey every people in this Zoom session, you know, how young have you given canes? And we'd all have different scenarios, but, you know, I've given canes as young as 2 years old when I thought it was appropriate, you know, and just toddling around, totally blind, walking down a hallway in a little, you know, preschool environment or infant toddler kind of daycare environment. So, you know, even if it's just getting them to hold on to, somebody mentioned it, just explore the cane, hold on to it for a little bit, knowing how to hold it and grip it and just feel it and explore it. And so take some steps with it. I know sometimes you're going to have to work with PTs, probably OTs, because can the students stand? You know, can they stand and walk unsupported? Those kinds of questions we have to ask. So we have to have team members to help us with those kinds of decisions. But I don't know.
Yeah, I hadn't found anything either like that
Yeah.
said anything about not giving the cane early. Like everything I've read was get early as you can. And I think that's kind of how I was like, best practice. I'm the most recent out of school. Like, if unless you show me otherwise, this is what I want to do. It's kind of how I, you know, how I thought about it.
So other than Donna Sauerberger, what are our, and that's a great one. I'm not opposed to her at all, but are there other resources on information for students who are deaf, blind, and O&M that we should be looking at? Because I have two right now, that middle school and high school
Let me look.
students who are deaf, blind, that I'm wading my way through what to do. So
Anna, are those your first? Because I've never had a student who's deafblind.
these are my most significant. I had one other one who had hearing loss. She did not use an interpreter and she could still use her hearing more so in some situations. Both of these now, one is totally deaf and has CDI, and the other one has ushers, so is losing vision and hearing fairly rapidly as a 7th grader. So they're much more intense than what I've dealt with in the past. And so even just figuring out the best way to utilize an interpreter when we're on lessons, all of those pieces is interesting.
Okay, so I have a question about that. Because I was thinking about Joan earlier when she was talking about adults. And I thought, well, what about someone who is an older student or an adult who is just starting to lose vision? Do you slap that cane in their hand as soon as possible, or do you wait till they're ready? How do you approach that?
The minute my sister-in-law says I want to do it on my own and I'm tired of holding on to my kids, I'm like, let me find you a cane. Here, let me show you where to buy one.
So letting them decide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when they get sometimes past the attitude, you know, life sucks and get away from me and you hand me a cane, we've had a couple of those here when they actually realized that they didn't need mama's shoulder. And that's how he was getting around. Mama's leading him around. When he finally realized that he wasn't going to always have mama and that he wanted a little bit of independence, then he was more than apt to take that cane and he actually started learning it. And he just done that in probably the last 2 years and he's been here 4. It took him a couple of years to get used to the idea that he would never have vision. And it was a really hard adjustment for him.
I've worked with, you know, particular one female, she was an adult though, and she asked to be able to have a lesson with me. And so we scheduled a time and she just wanted to touch it. She just wanted to feel it. She was deaf and, you know, now is thinking about, you know, losing her sight. And so she just wanted to kind of, what is a cane? Let me look at it. And I handed it to her and she literally threw up. The emotion from it all, you know, of thinking of herself as someone who is going to be deaf and blind and will have to use this device. It was really emotional for her. So I think it is kind of, you know, it really taught me kind of that there's more to this decision. Like there's a lot of emotion that might go into this when you've got someone who's, you know, suddenly lost vision or is anticipating losing blindness. That cane represents something more than just a tool of independence. To the person who's now receiving it, it has, you know, we don't know what's in their mind about that device.
I think for parents too and families.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that same thing.
Yep.
I have a question. I have a college student at the state school for the deaf in the transition program this year. And the state school was asking about a deaf blind cane. Has anybody ever heard what that is?
Isn't it just the one that has the red and white?
Yeah.
Isn't it like the striped?
Yeah, it's a
They
different
had,
color.
they had more red stripes. My understanding is that's primarily used in Europe and not a lot in the
Right.
States. Is that?
Okay.
Mhm.
I don't know. They were adamant that I get him a deaf blind cane instead of just a white cane. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is, where to get it. And I'm like, okay. But he doesn't even use his cane. So I'm like, I'm not spending money to get him a deaf blind cane if he won't even use his white cane. But I was wondering if anybody knew what it was and if we actually use it here.
Well, the point of the different, you know, variations of the canes is that that the sighted population would know what they mean. Someone who's sighted is not going to probably know that the way that cane is, you know, made up with red and white, that's for someone who's deafblind. They're
That's what I
still
was
calling them
wondering.
sticks, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, they don't even know what our white canes do half
Right.
the time. So, okay.
Robin, I don't know if you're at a spot where you can see the chat, but I did drop a website from the UK about deafblind canes.
I was just gonna post the same thing, and
Did ya?
I'm gonna post it anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw it. I'm not driving. I'm at a FFA conference with my daughter, so I'm Zooming in a group full of high school blue jacket people.
Fun times.
Oh yeah.
At the International Orientation Mobility Symposium, they did talk about the other looking canes across the world. There is a green cane too. So not just a red and a white one, but it all depends on the country.
What's the green cane represent?
It was the variation of low vision.
Oh,
So not that I'm blind, but I'm low vision. And I don't know if that would allow for the same white cane protections that our canes do. But that also was not the United States. So, and they had one for each variation.
yeah. See, we ended up accidentally getting a whole bunch of colored canes one year. Just they got ordered, and because they were special ordered, they couldn't take them back. So we have these beautiful purple and yellow and canes. And of course that was a no-no. So we had to get, put the canes back, and it's because they would not be recognized as a cane for the visually impaired. So that's where Andrea come from it, so we've got a nice little pile here that one of these days we will fix.
Don't we like those kinds of canes? Don't like people talk about using like those kinds of canes for like dress up occasions, like
Yes.
proms, or like I mean, would it be so bad to like give them as a gift to like, this is for your prom, or this is for this event, this special event you're going to go to, and you should match your dress to it or whatever.
But not if it's not going to give them protection. I mean, one of the reasons we use it is for protection and for the cars to understand they're already confused.
Well, my understanding is they only use those canes like when they're at the event, in the event, not like traveling outside.
For example, I've had high school girls for prom or homecoming they'll want to have their cane match their dress. And so they're using it inside the facility.
Okay.
I have a student who her mom calls it, what she calls it the weekend cane, and her mom calls it the illegal cane. And it's a Kansas City Chiefs colored cane. And she knows, and mom knows, you're not using that in school and you are not doing any street crossings with that cane.
And my student grabbed one at a different school. I don't work with her now, but she had a pink cane. And we talked about it. It had a pink stripe at the bottom. So it was white, but the pink stripe at the bottom we covered with red tape. And I was like, okay, you can still use it because it's white with red. You can have a pink grip. It can have a whatever, but it has to have the white and red.
Yeah, you could, I mean, I would think you could do like a grip as a different color and just like have the red and white on the shaft.
Yeah, that's what we discussed because I couldn't see her mom buying a cane and then her not using it, which she didn't end up using it anyways, but.
Well, Andrea shared an idea to have a student use what you call it, a concert cane. And it was all black. And that would be perfect for two of my students because they carried their canes on stage the other day at their concert. And not that there's anything wrong with it being obvious, but it would just blend in. It'd be kind of fancy.
But yeah, the fancy cane, that would be perfect. That'd be awesome, actually. Have it because you have a concert dress that you have to wear.
Right.
So having your cane match that would be kind of fun.
True.
I think if the students understand that this cane is only used in this location for this event or for these types of events, like a concert cane, that would be kind of nice for them.
Right. Well, I think we kind of got off topic there, but that's okay. That was a good conversation. This next one is huge. And if you are the one who submitted this and you know specifics, that would be great. But it is scope and sequence for O&M, sequential skills, when and how.
The only place I've ever seen anything like that is in the Big Red Book. And I took pictures of it once, but it's not really, I don't think I've ever seen it updated anywhere, but there is one in the Big Red O&M book.
Joan, are you talking about the age where there's like, I don't know, 10, 12 pages of age appropriate skills?
Yes.
That's what I've been using. And it's it's been a lifesaver because sometimes you get to that point where you're just brain dead. You've got a student that's reached a certain point. Now what do you do? So that's the only one I've been able to find as well.
And I guess I really just follow TAPS. Age appropriate for me again comes back to the students as much what do they need with where they're at as how old are they? Because I mean, just back on public transportation, we might think of public transportation being a high school type thing, but if you live in Udall, Kansas, or Lyons, Kansas, or Geneseo, Kansas, where you have to drive 20 miles just to find a stoplight, forget public transportation, you may have to start it sooner to get that to happen. So I like to have those age. I hadn't thought about that being in Big Red, but you know, just following TAPS does a nice just one skill to the next down. And some of the new, Penny and Jenny and Midley and I were working last week looking through some different assessments and figuring out how they compare and what they do. And really a lot of them follow a pretty similar sequence, whether you use what New York has picked or Michigan or TAPS or whatever, the sequence is still pretty much there. So picking one and sticking with it so that I'm not jumping around is probably helpful. But
yeah, I liked the New York one just simply because it gives a level 1, level 2, and I'll get the link for you. Level 2, level 3. That's the one when I was practicing. It's the one I like to use.
We were using that as a source as well, Julie.
Pardon me?
We were using that as well.
You were?
A source. And their website is phenomenal. They got a lot of other resources.
Mhm. I'll put it in the chat here.
Thank you. I've never heard of it.
It's just, I used it as a guide for myself. It helped me, so.
It was new to me as well, Joan, so all good.
I'm gonna bookmark it now.
Yeah.
I'm bookmarking all sorts of fun stuff.
I worked in New York for a while, so that's how I became aware of it. It's not like,
Okay.
I just,
I've been doing a lot of my assessments with the New Mexico, which
Mhm.
very much follows an order. And so then I have utilized that for IEP goals as well, and coming back to it each year for planning for the future. So
And
I
the New
kinda-
Mexico was nice for tracking hours. Sorry, I had to recertify and have all of that written down across how many kids I worked with. It was nice to have all of it. I could just plug it in at the bottom. So
Say that again.
I used the New Mexico as my hours to recertify. Because you have to have like 360 direct service hours or something across 5 years. And I'm like trying to figure out that last year. Because up to then I've been using Google Calendar. And so I'd mark in when I saw a kid and how long I traditionally see them. But New Mexico marks down how much you're supposed to see and how much you really do see, just in case they're gone or you're gone or something.
and that's a different form than the assessment, but it's also on their website under the O&M resources.
The session notes.
Although technically, I've never kept track of hours, Joan. I always had administrators who said, oh yeah, you've definitely done 360 hours and signed off on it.
Well, I wasn't sure because this is my first time recertifying, and I was like, I want to make sure I have it in
Yeah.
there.
So as long as a certain percentage of your job is considered enough to have fulfilled
yeah.
those hours.
Yeah. Well, and across 5 years, more than half of my job is O&M now, so we'll be good.
See, we've got that one as a source too for our assessment that we're putting together. The thing is, I like it that it is kind of sequential, but it's so huge and overwhelming. And we always talked about maybe getting Kylie. She's the guru of that one, and having her show us just exactly how to do it.
Well, I use the student notes when I'm coming up on a reeval, or even if I get a chance to maybe sit down and look at their annual. But otherwise, I just use the student note or the session notes. Every time I see them, we mark down what we did and what we worked on.
I kind of like the Texas two-step's pretty good for the younger kids, just for the sequential and also for the IEP goals and assessments. It kind of does all three for the younger kids.
Robin, I have a question for you regarding that, and this leads into our next topic. So when I was looking at Texas Two Steps, I started to use it with students, and there were so many components that I felt needed to be a team approach with PT, depending on the student. So the next one is how can O&M work together with other related services to make progress and achieve goals? So we can move into that too.
On the Texas, what I do is I kind of go through the sections and say, okay, this is more OT, this is more PT. And I kind of give them the assessment and say, hey, can you fill this out for me during your sessions and tell me what you think on these skills? And that's how I do it. I kind of did the same thing with the, what is it called? The
I do that with
Oregon
the
project. I do that with the Oregon. That's what I was thinking. I was like, what is that one with the toddler one? I do that with the Oregon one, is I kind of farm it out to their specification, because I'm like, they know better in that some of those gross motor skills than I do. Yeah, I can see it, but they know better on those skills. And so that's what I kind of do as a team approach.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Minley?
Yeah, I think that's good. I'm wondering.
Because the Texas two-step is overwhelming when you look at it and you start assessing it. I'm like, holy crap, this is going to take forever. And especially with those younger ones, you get maybe 10 minutes of work time, maybe 20 if you're doing good. And so having it.
Sorry. I have a question about that too. Do you do every section? Because like the Oregon, I would never do all of the sections if I knew other people were using other assessments.
What
You know.
I've done with the Texas, if I know that they've already mastered, like they're jumping, they pretty much have those skills that lead up to the jump, that jumping on one foot. So I don't assess all that. I just go straight to what they're doing and then I go up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
So
it
then
doesn't-
what about like if you had a really young, I'm thinking like a baby, and you're looking at like the reflexes.
Yeah.
So that would be something that, yes, the PT would for sure be evaluating.
And the
Would you just
Texas,
get that from them?
yeah, I would. That get that from them. And I do kind of look at their age and say, okay, this is like their ceiling, and this should be where their baseline is. And I kind of go from that point of view too. Because you're not going to assess them on something that they can't do because of their age either. If that makes sense.
And I generally find that those other service providers appreciate that, because they're finding that whatever tool they typically use with students isn't working well for a student with a significant visual impairment, for sure, because so many of their probes are visually based. And so they're like, I don't know what to do with this. How do I assess? A lot of times they're coming to me anyway. So if we can show them the Oregon, or I have Texas 2-steps. I haven't really.
What about, do you feel comfortable doing all the reflexes?
Because that's what I'm. No, I would definitely rely on them.
Right, because that's what I'm wondering. Like with, well, we have that little one that we're, going to be doing together. But I don't think PT is involved. Do you know what I mean? So there won't be that information, I don't think. I mean, the ECSC is the only person going out to that kiddo.
So can we ask for PT to do a check-in in that situation to help us assess those things, to know what,
I think we
what we're
could.
looking for?
Yes, I think we could do that.
Because,
I think they have PT available. So
right,
I'm thinking of that program in particular if they have it, but they do.
Oh,
so,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking about what Robin said earlier, and you could always have the PT video, whatever they're doing too, because there are certain positioning things that I want to see what they're doing and what they feel comfortable with the student doing. So that'd be another option.
Well, and I've even offered to team up with them, knowing that they have to, for some reason, the PT and OT and speech here, they're all busy with the Medicaid log. So they won't pair up with each other unless it's a homebound student, and that's for safety of human beings. But in the school district, they would allow me to come watch because I don't have to bill for Medicaid. So we could share times and work together. But I don't think they understood that I didn't have to bill Medicaid. And that's where their focus was, I guess. I don't know.
And this one came from Anna. I do remember this. Cane holsters. Anyone know of anything durable, usable, and appropriate for a high school boy?
I'm looking for the one in Midley. I need to talk with you because I think you're the one that ordered this one. I don't know where I put it at the moment, but the belt holster from Ambutech, the holster part came off of the belt within the first 4 days of using it. And he's not like a heavy duty cane user. He's the totally deaf student with CVI. So he's using it strictly outside for uneven areas. He has some lower field issues and then balance issues because of the hearing loss. And so.
Is that the leather one you're talking about, Anna?
Yeah.
You might take it to the shoe repair shop and have them
that's what I thought.
Double stitch it.
Mm-hmm. And that was he's funny kid anyway. And he was so appalled that it broke so soon. And it was not even double stitched. And
the only one
realized the whole thing.
The one that I've got some here in the office. Next time you're in, you need to look at them. And they look more cardboard than anything.
Well, and I got one from you, Penny, some of them aren't even hardly big enough for,
Yeah.
like, you know, he's a 5'9" or 10 probably
Yeah, so
kid.
it folds a lot.
So he's got a long cane.
Yeah.
By the time you fold it up, it barely fits, and he likes the big disc, the
Mhm.
jumbo roller, I call it. It's not actually a disc. It looks like a disc to me compared to some of the others, but you know, so it's got to go in the one certain way. So we're just really struggling. And where he only uses it in certain locations, he needs it handy, but not in the way.
Anna, someone asked me about Darby's cane, so
Yes.
I took a picture of her pouch, and I'll share it with you guys. Are you seeing Darby?
Yes. And remind me, you ordered the pouch from somewhere and then you added the strap. Was that?
Well, it was the same kind of thing, and it's so frustrating because everything that we buy for our kids is expensive to start with, and then when it falls apart in 2 days, that just shouldn't happen. But so she had this little one, and it came with a leather strap, but it wouldn't fit a turtle. It was like sticking the cane in her armpit. So I took that's a strap of nylon, and I glued it to the leather and stitched a little square to try. It's held up for, it's been a good month now, and it's still fine. And she wears it every day, all day at school.
Right.
See, it reminds me of the one Rich used to wear, and I don't know, he graduated, so I don't know where he got his. And his O&M is probably, I think she retired, and I don't know if they ever replaced that. So he's the only one I've ever seen wear one.
Who, Rich?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got that one from Amutech.
Oh,
And
okay.
he's had a belt pack, I think, too. That's
Yeah, and he's
that's
had
before,
a
but-
couple of them. He's got one
Okay.
now that's a fanny pack and a cane holster.
Right.
And it looks kind of, he doesn't care.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but his very
So-
first one, he used it for a long time before it wore out. And that was the Amutech one, and then this next one was the fanny pack one. So I guess he's still using it. I haven't got to see him lately.
So Ambitech is pretty much our only option.
Well, unless we start a business plan, we make
Okay.
our own. See?
Speaking of that, a couple of years ago, I was at a craft fair, and this company had, I think it was a company, but they've gone out of business, but it was a crossbody bag that had like a purse attached to it. It wasn't a purse, but it was somewhere like a wallet attached to it. And then it had a spot for your water bottle. And I was like, that would be perfect for the cane to slip into the water bottle and keep your credit card and your ID in the slip of it. But when I went to go purchase one, they went out of business already. But when I go to craft fairs, I look for stuff like that. I'm like, okay. And it was pretty. It was like all pretty colors and flowers. I'm like, oh, the girls would really like this, because the ones at Ambitech are kind of boring. They're all black.
Well, and I would think you could come up with all kinds of different like things that you could use to carry a cane versus getting something from Amutech. Like I think of wine bottle holders. They're long and slim. So I would think a cane full, you could like put that in there, and then typically they have a little handle that you could easily put a strap on to make it like a crossbody, like what Darby had. So, I mean, that's the first thing that came to mind. I was like, what else could we use?
Well, something I have learned is that you have to order an even number of sections for the folding canes. Even, or is it odd? One of the ones I thought, okay, it always has to be, and I think it's even, because that way the handle is at the top and then the tip is at the top.
Right.
Oh. Hadn't thought of that.
Okay, well, keep sharing your ideas. If you see something else, we'll keep working on it. He also lives in a community where when I talked to the police officer this week about helping us with a presentation for the high school drivers, is like, I don't even know what the white cane law is. I'm like, and that's why we're coming to talk to you.
It could
That
even
was-
be something that you guys decide to do and then send it to Makerspace and maybe they can do something with it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
That was, Anna, that was a conversation we had with the Arc City Police Department when they came up for meeting us for White Cane Day.
Yeah, probably so.
You know, another idea, I don't know if they're even still alive because I haven't been up there for a while, but Amish do a lot of tool and leather work, you know, with saddles and stuff. I know that, and I've had them make me stuff when I was doing homebound way long time ago before I ever became an O&M. And they would make standers by just, you take a picture in there and show them and they'd figure it out. But I don't know, it'd be fun to see if they could create a cane belt or whatever you want to call
Right.
it.
That reminds me, we went to the Renaissance Festival with the drama club. We could have the
Yeah.
they
There you
have the
go.
artisans up there. They'd be willing to do it.
Yep.
Well, we're pretty close to time. We have two fairly big topics left. One is low vision students, late middle school and early high school. And the other is O&M with higher phase CVI. And then just O&M and CVI in general. So I am working on getting Sarah Elizabeth in late November, early December for the echo identification. So hopefully that will be our next one. And then in the spring, since you guys are the ones who are here, would you like to continue with the Q&A and just have a discussion in the spring? I see one head nodding. I see more than one. Okay.
I like it.
It's nice to be able to bring it to people in the same place that are doing some of the same things and be able to ask questions and not feel like an idiot. So we have a lot of learning still. There's still a lot I don't know.
It's ongoing. It's
Mhm.
ongoing
Yes.
for all of us.
And Robin, I see you're saying yes. Okay. All right. Well, you'll hear from me soon about Sarah Elizabeth, I hope. And thank you so much for joining today. And I hope you have a great weekend.